compare to those who should have been most knowledgeable, most prepared in their response to him. I think there's a reason Mark's pointing this out, the way he's pointing it out. I really do. Like the comparison is just mind-boggling. And there's an interesting thing here too, that, so if you think about the Pharisees, and they're standing there and they're watching Jesus. Now, let's just put aside all the things we've talked about, their potential intent or their fear or all of these things. If you're a Pharisee and you're schooled in the law and you're schooled in the Talmud and you're very, very educated, you're anticipating the Messiah, it's like you kind of have an instruction manual. Like, I haven't seen this yet, but I know what to look for, theoretically, right? And so when the Pharisees see Jesus, what are they doing? Now, in the context of all this bad stuff that's going on with them from an intent perspective, they're going, let's see, no, he doesn't meet that one. I don't know if he meets that one. I don't think he meets that one. They're evaluating, right, whether his claims are true. Now, that's a natural human response. I'm not being just fundamentally critical of it. I think they had some very implicit bias to get to know pretty quickly. We've talked about that. But they're basically looking at Jesus and evaluating him and his claims, right? What do the demons do? Do they look at Jesus and evaluate his claims? They go right to the floor. Like they know that the person standing in front of them is the God of the universe with all authority over them as demons. No question, no evaluation, no nothing. And the only way that they can relieve their pain is by declaring him the Son of God. Think about that difference. Now, I want to transfer that over a little bit, kind of to us. How do we respond when we encounter Jesus? How do we respond when we encounter Jesus? Are we? Go ahead.
Is this really a real religion? Is this really a real thing, or is this just kind of maybe a one-time thing? We don't know whether or not we really want to believe that this is really Jesus who's the Son of God. And a lot of people just think, well, he's just kind of a good prophet, and let it go at that.
Yeah. So you kind of have two questions in the one question. The one is, how do we respond when we meet Jesus, and how do we see people respond when they meet Jesus, right? Hopefully, inside evangelism and our discipleship, they're meeting Jesus through us, right? So we know that people can be in opposition to Jesus, and they can be in opposition even when they're not ignorant. Like they can be fully informed. I mean, you can share the gospel with somebody very clearly, and there can be a full revelation of who Jesus is and what he did, and there can still be opposition to that, right? We encounter that all the time. So opposition isn't necessarily a lack of knowledge. The Pharisees had full knowledge. They should have had open eyes. I'm actually more interested in the question, though, like, if we think about our own lives, like, how do we respond? And it's not really a fair question, because it's kind of loosey-goosey, but because what do you mean by when we meet Jesus, Kevin? When we, in our daily walk, encounter Jesus, what are ways that we encounter Jesus in our daily walk? Go ahead.
I mean, the daily walk's different. I mean, like this week we've been going through a lot of trials. And so I guess my example of meeting Jesus this week is he's just another man on the sidewalk, and I just blew by him and didn't even notice him. That's where I'm standing right now.
I mean, that's actually a great example. That Entertaining angels unawares, that kind of thing. What else? I thought you were going somewhere different with the trials, but that concept that we can be going through trials and actually have Jesus standing right next to us and not know it, not acknowledge it, not recognize it, not rely on him. Do we sometimes, so what the Pharisees were doing, I think if I summed it up in a single word, I would say the Pharisees were rationalizing. Why were they rationalizing? We talked about it. Why were they rationalizing? Why does anybody rationalize? We all do it. Why does anybody rationalize? Why would they have been rationalizing? Okay, yeah, it didn't fit what they were wanting or expecting.
To justify ourselves.
Yeah. I think that's probably it at its foundation, is whenever I rationalize, I'm doing it because I want to get to the answer that I want, right? And so when we see the Pharisees' response to Jesus, we see this deep rationalization that he was actually, how would they have responded to him if he had come and said, "Well done, my good and faithful servants. You've kept this going really, really well. That legalism thing that you're doing, thumbs up, nicely done, good job. I can take it from here. And, oh, by the way, you've been so faithful, I want you to be my followers." How would they have responded? Yes. Yeah. We're in. And then they probably would have started telling him what to do, but notwithstanding that, he didn't do that. Like, I suspect they were expecting that. Like, why wouldn't he choose us? Wait, whoa. A tax collector? Fisherman? Nobodies? Backgrounds we don't even know about? Like, whoa, time out, dude. I've spent my whole life learning the law. I can tell you all about yourself. Just ask me. And so they just immediately started rationalizing why he wasn't who he was. And to the point where they started to rationalize killing him, like plotting to kill him. We're starting the plot to kill here. We saw that earlier in chapter 3. Take the demons. Did the demons rationalize? Demons fell flat on their face. Said, "You are the Son of God." They knew who he was. They knew his power. They knew his authority. All that stuff we talked about that he had authority over, authority over discipleship, authority over the Sabbath, authority over everything. There was no question about that. They knew that. We see that from their response. And so, if we think about just ourselves, and we think about how do we respond when we see Jesus, and you don't have to answer this, but I want you to think just about yourself. I've thought about it, studying for this. Who do I want to be more like in how I respond to Jesus? Do I want to be more like the unclean spirits, or do I want to be more like the Pharisees? That's a weird thought. I actually want to be more like the unclean spirits. Careful, Nathan. Easy.
That's a great perspective, because I think the distinction between the two, they're both evil, right? But the difference is that the demons see the spiritual reality.
Yeah, and they know they're evil.
And they know they're evil.
They know they're evil.
They know they're evil.
Right.
They see the spiritual reality. I like to think things cinematically sometimes from my own imagination. It helps enliven the scriptures. I picture whenever a demon maniac, whatever they're called in the scriptures, but somebody who's demon possessed, whenever that demon inside them sees Jesus approaching, I think of all the people around them. They just see a crazy man writhing and saying, "No, stay away, stay away." But from the demon's perspective, he's literally watching this unbearable light getting closer and closer and closer until he can't even, like you aptly said, the pain.
Can't stand it.
He can't stand the pain of it
Yeah.
anymore. He has to profess him as Lord, because to do so is that's the only thing that he can do at that moment.
And so if you think about, like, and I believe, actually, Scripture points out that Satan has power in this world. Again, it's probably a whole different lesson, but the whole concept of possession and everything. But he has power over people that allow him to have power over them. I believe there are demonic spirits. And how do they see us as we approach them? Do they see us as a shining light? Or do they, that's unbearable? Or do they see us as kind of a 3-watt light bulb? It's just kind of, you ever seen one of those little low-watt light bulbs?
So one of my favorite things to do is just on YouTube or Substack or other places, I like to read people's testimonies about what their life was like before they encountered Christ or whatever. My favorite ones are very frequently people who are coming out of being a witch or being into like the occult and things like that. Some of their testimonies are great because they'll say one of the things that was consistent throughout all their testimonies is that whenever they would encounter a true Christian, they're possessed by demons, or at least working in cahoots with demons at this point in their walk or in their life, and they encounter a Christian, they would try to cast hexes or curses and stuff like that on them, or use the demonic, ask the demons to do evil things to these people or whatever. And they said it was just like they had a bubble or a shield around them, or sometimes light or other things they would associate with these people, and it would scare them. And they're like, wait, I thought I had contact with the supreme powers. And this person, without any effort, completely just bounced right off of them. And that would get them to start re-examining what they believe, and to eventually, it would soften their heart enough that they would start to have a Bible study or whatever and come to faith. And I was like, that is our power.
Yeah.
But it's not our power, it's Christ's
Right.
power in us.
And I think that's that indwelling of the Holy Spirit. But back to my original question, kind of going back to Rob's comment, how do we respond when we encounter Jesus? And I think what we see from the demons and the demon-possessed is immediate and absolute submission. Like there's no intermediate step. They go straight to submission. Right? Now, we'll talk a little bit about what they want to do after that. But if you think about then, like, what do we do when we encounter Jesus? What does absolute submission look like for us? Like, Rob, in your example, submission might have looked like stopping and engaging with the person. I don't know. But it looked different than potentially what you shared that you did, right? And I think if that's a question we have on our minds constantly as we walk, what does submission look like in this situation? What is, like, getting on the ground and just prostrate. I do that every time. I've got to stop using that word. Prostrating myself, emotionally, I'm not suggesting physically, but emotionally, spiritually, what does that look like? What does that immediate submission look like? And I think it's really easy for us to look at the external, as we walk through the Gospels or we walk through the Scripture. It's really easy to look at what our experiences are externally with other people, or what we observe or what we experience. But I really want to encourage us to think about ourselves. Like, what is my behavior? What is my response? What does it look like for me when I'm encountering Jesus like that? And so, keep going. And the unclean, they cried out, "Thou art the Son of God." And he straightly charged them that they should not make them known. The ESV says, and he strictly ordered them not to make him known. Why? That honestly, when I read that, it seems a little weird that that's Jesus' immediate response. But he immediately tells them. So what can you imply from that? What were they likely to do? If he's ordering him not to do it, the implication is that they were preparing to do it, or he knew that that was something that they were preparing to do. Why would he do that? Why would Mark reveal to us that Jesus' first response says, do not tell others? Well, you're talking about this is the demons.
Yes, I know, but that's what I'm leading up to. All these people from these various locations that we read about are coming because if they're knowledgeable and heard about Judaism and the coming Messiah, and they are thinking of a military one.
I would say that would be a common theme among the Jews, not the Gentiles. I think it reveals that Gentiles are coming because he's healing and he's doing miraculous
yes,
works.
definitely. And if they're ill, they want to be healed. But if these people or demons were saying that he was the Son of God, it would help add to the influence of these people who are wanting a military Messiah.
Did you have something, Nathan?
So I think there's several different angles you can kind of take that. Actually, kind of being one of them is the dynamic of Israel's expectations. But I think it all kind of falls under the umbrella of a big spiritual truth that the Bible presents us with, and that is that God revealed, or I'd put it this way, God's grace, as manifest through the person of Jesus Christ, historically speaking, hardens just as much as it liberates, if not more so. And Jesus understands that the more of himself is being revealed to humanity as they come into contact with his righteousness and holiness, the more humanity is going to be hardened. And he has to make sure that time of hardening, according to prophecy, is fulfilled when it needs to be fulfilled. Yeah. If it's hardened too quickly, then the prophecy is not fulfilled. If it's not hardened quickly enough, the prophecy is not fulfilled. There's this hardening aspect of God's grace that is oftentimes overlooked. When God works, humanity always responds. And the response is going to be either a softening or a hardening. There's no other way around it.
It's a submit or harden. It's one of, I think you're on the path that I was on. If you think about, well, the whole, the Gospels, the whole book of Mark, is the revealing of the plan that Jesus had over his 3 years of ministry. And it's a very intentional and specific timing of the revelation of who he is to two different groups of people and by a pre-planned group of people who ended up being his apostles. And so now it didn't always get controlled. We know that, right? Don't go tell anybody. I'm going and telling people. Like, I'm out. Like, I'm going to make this known, right? So if you think about Jesus's identity, not just as a guy that's doing wonderful works and healing, but as the Son of God, as the anticipated Messiah, I think one of the first things is Jesus knows that he doesn't want the first and primary announcement of that to come from demonic sources. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. Partly because that, we'll learn later, that would actually affirm what he was being accused of by the Pharisees. That he was doing these works through demonic sources, right? By the power of Satan. And so I think there's that. Nathan talked about timing, right? Timing is prophetic, and there's, like, the only time we actually get a full understanding of what Jesus is revealing is it's actually after he's ascended. Like, we think about up to the crucifixion, but actually it's at the ascension. And when the full revelation of who Jesus was for this whole period of time, right? And so if you think about how that's going to be revealed, the timing and who's doing it is very important. And again, like we see this all the time. Testimony, good testimony from a bad source actually will distort the message. I mean, we see this in the Christian world today. Like there's a lot of good testimony that comes from bad sources that actually distort that testimony in damaging ways. And so I think all of those things. Suze, did you have something? You had your hand up. You got.
One of my first thoughts just mentioned about the timeline distorted. And so that thought came to me also. But also another one that came to me with what you were saying, not want that type of people backing you. But I was liking it to, like when I want a job and I send out a resume, I watch who I put down for them to contact. You know, I mean, you want to pick the one that you know really is going to be trusting, that really trust you and will say things that will be helping me instead of hurting me. And so, but that went quite a bit along with what you were already saying.
When you hear something that is important and potentially transformative for you, does the source of that information make a difference? Can you think of people in your lives where if one person told you the same thing as somebody else told you, that you would respond differently to it? All the time. Yeah, all the time. If my wife tells me something, I'm not going to believe it. Come on. No, if my wife tells me something, it's rock solid. Like I'm paying attention. I mean, I know her wisdom. I've lived with her for 41 years. I'm listening. Somebody I just met and I just had a 20-minute conversation with starts telling me some deep truths. You know, I'm going to listen, but I'm probably going to be more skeptical, or I'm not going to have the same basis for taking in that information and processing it, right? Interestingly, and we see Jesus do this with some frequency, this command for silence. There are some commentators that actually see this as a pattern in Mark. They call it, in Mark, they call it the messianic secret. I did not know that till I studied for this lesson. There's a term for it. It's the messianic secret. And it's this concept that reflects Jesus' refusal. Now, remember, Jesus is building his identity, right? All of these interactions are a very intentional way that Jesus is building his identity that's going to build and build and build throughout this ministry into its final culmination. And so this concept that he's refusing to let that identity to be defined on anybody else's terms. There's, as Nathan mentioned, there's actually a prophetic plan for that, how that identity is going to be revealed, and least of all unclean spirits, right? But he's got this whole mission before him of this concept of suffering service that still needs to be revealed. And then it was mentioned that this kind of premature, politically charged Messiah message, again, like what the Messiah was, what they were looking for, Jesus can't allow that to be detached from the cross. That has to be attached to the cross, right? Because, Bernice, as you pointed out, if it gets detached, it leads to exactly what they were looking for. It leads down that political path, right? And it's not the movement he came to lead.
Does verse 13 kind of almost quite exactly what he's saying?
Give my time. Give me a little bit more.
Well, when he says he went up on the mountain and summoned those whom he himself wanted, and they came to him, he's calling the 12.
Yeah. No. That's absolutely inside his plan. Like he has a very specific plan on who he's going to reveal himself to and how. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't fully understand what you were asking. And then so we've got this kind of interlude of like grace and mercy. It's going to get sandwiched in between these conflict narratives that we read about earlier, and then we're going to read about in 20 through 30 at the end of the chapter. And I think it's just a really good thing to remember that inside of all of this mess that Jesus finds himself in, that's being caused by the religious leaders, there's never a separation from this foundational mission of compassion that Jesus, we always see Jesus returning to compassion, right? We always see him returning to compassion. I'm going to stop because we're going to pick up in verse 13 where Jesus appoints the 12. I'm going to hold here. We just got a couple of minutes anyways. And this is the chapter we talk about the unforgivable sin. So my suggestion would, read up, do a little study. That's always an exciting conversation about what is the unforgivable sin. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate the help. I actually got some energy. It's fun stuff.